Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 106, Haven.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Each week on Mission Log, we take apart an episode of Star Trek, be it from the original series, the animated series, Next Generation, and sadly, that's all the Star Trek there is. We take it apart for messages, morals, and meanings and try to figure out whether the whole thing stands the test of time.
This week, we're hitting the episode Haven, and in the proud Betazoid podcast tradition, I'm doing this show naked.
Wait, only this show?
Well, yeah, well... I was going to say something like a Betazoid would never tell, but apparently Betazoids tell everything all the time.
Betazoids would totally tell. By the way, I think that last thing answers the question why we don't do podcasts at conventions.
Right.
I've always found it, a difficult idea to come up to anyway. When people ask us, by the way, why don't you guys do things like this, or why don't you do stuff like that, how do you suppose people are asking us? Well, there's a bunch of ways that people can. Facebook, Skype, and Twitter, people get in touch with us. Our handle there in all of those places is Mission Log Pod. They can call us, 323-522-5641. They can email us, missionlog@roddenberry.com. You could also check our show website where we keep the discovered documents and then some, other stuff, missionlogpodcast.com. And then we got two other places you can find us online. Trekmovie.com has us on their site. Trek FM has us. That is trek.fm. And, of course, you can just search for us in iTunes. And I think we're on Stitcher. And I think under your chair, if you look under your chair, you might find Mission Log. Remember, whatever way you choose to get in touch with us, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of the show.
If people look under their chair and they find Mission Log, do they still have to pay taxes for the prize that they just won?
I think they do.
Okay.
That's really going to be our best episode ever, when we can get Oprah on going, you get Mission Log, and you get Mission Log.
Yeah. Yep.
In the meantime, you do get Mission Log, and you do too, but not that guy, so don't tell him.
Well, we'll move along for the half of the audience who had no idea what that reference was. All right. So, Ken, time for trivia. Will you indulge me?
Oh, I guess.
Okay. So, first of all, Carol Stroiken as Hum. Kind of hard to miss. He is a very, very tall man. He is known for his height. He played the giant in Twin Peaks, as well as Lurch in the Addams Family movies. I think that's definitely where I first noticed him. However, his first role in a major film was in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Yeah.
The Bee Gees movie.
Well, there's only one movie of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and that would be the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton, along with an all-star cast, including Carol Stroiken.
All right.
Yeah. You've seen that movie, right?
No.
Really?
Really?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Don't.
Okay.
It's kind of painful, but enjoyable in a weird, painful way. Carol Stroiken was born in The Hague. He studied directing at the Amsterdam Film School and then studied at the American Film Institute. I want to mention Robert Ellenstein, who is Stephen Miller, not to be confused with the guy with the band, Stephen Miller. We also saw him as the president of the Federation in Star Trek IV.
Oh, now, rocking the goatee.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
that's why I didn't recognize him. Yeah, he's got the goatee in Star Trek IV.
Yeah, well, he's got the mustache and a little. Yeah, he's got that dark robe on, and yeah. Now his son in the story, Wyatt Miller, is played by Rob Knepper. Rob will show up again much later in Star Trek Voyager, playing an alien. Now, Majel Barrett, of course, we have to mention Majel Barrett Roddenberry. This is the first appearance as Lwaxana Troi, and of course, we know her from the pilot of TOS as number one. We know her from the series as Chapel and as the computer voice. She often said that this was her favorite role, and we get more of Lwaxana Troi as Next Gen goes along. Now, according to Rod, she loved the character so much that she kept some of Lwaxana's dresses for herself after they were done filming. Usually you don't get to do that on a show, but I guess if you know the producer, then you get to.
And she knew the producer.
She did. She did know the producer, yeah. Yes, that is Armin Shimmerman as the face in the wedding gift box that is beamed aboard in the first part of the episode. Now, this was filmed before The Last Outpost, which means that he played this role before playing a Ferengi. So sort of an inauspicious start to his Star Trek career. Richard Compton, who directed Haven, was an actor who actually appeared in small roles in the original series. Kind of cool. He's sort of in the background as a Romulan in, as I believe he's a Klingon in the background of one episode. And he also appears as an Enterprise crew member in the Doomsday Machine. And when he started directing, and he did a lot of that in the 80s, a lot of TV, including Miami Vice and T.J. Hooker, so reunited with William Shatner there. Now, this episode was written by Tracy Torme, and yes, I always wondered about that last name, if that was from the famous progeny, and yes, Tracy Torme is Mel Torme's son. Now, Tracy was a writer on Saturday Night Live in the early 80s. He was a very young man. I think he was about 23 when he got that job, and he joined the Next Gen writing staff as a story editor and producer for seasons 1 and 2. He was committed through his contract to bring at least 3 scripts, original scripts of his own to each season. This one was his first. And I wanted to mention kind of a cool special effect here. The Tyrellian ship, kind of interesting in its own right. Andy Probert designed it. And it was Gene Roddenberry who suggested putting the energy source in the middle of the ship. So Andy Probert wanted something a little different from the traditional, rear-mounted thruster engines or everything that we've seen from the Federation, the kind of rear-mounted warp nacelles. And so Gene actually suggested putting this glowing mass in the middle of the ship that just kind of pulls it along, whether it would have been from the front or from the middle. And that glowing mass was shot as a green screen composite. So they built the model, and you had this green globe mounted in the middle of the ship, so then they could key that out and put in the effect later on in post.
Legend has it that this is the most important podcast you will ever hear. That does, of course, have no basis in any sort of provable fact. But hey, who knows?
Prologue. The Enterprise is on its way to Haven, a planet so renowned for being groovy that some think it's magic. Mystical healing properties, stuff like that. Picard and crew will go there for shore leave, which will probably be fine since nothing bad ever happens when the Enterprise has shore leave planned. For Commander Riker, the relaxation period seems to have already begun. He's watching the 24th century version of MTV in his quarters when Security Officer Yar calls him to the transporter room, as well as Counselor Deanna Troi. Some unidentified thing is beaming aboard the Enterprise. It's a creepy talking chest, face and everything. And it lets Troi know that her mother, her future in-laws, and her future husband are on the way. Kind of bumps Deanna out. Act 1. Counselor Troi is apologizing to Captain Picard. She never thought she would actually have to go through with this arranged or genetically bonded marriage. Once married, Troi says she and her husband will not be able to stay aboard the Enterprise. Picard takes it in stride, though Riker is obviously upset. Troi can sense this. She's an empath, you see. Also, she has eyes. She points out to Riker that he wants more than anything to be a starship captain. He says, well, yeah, but I can do more than that. She hopes he'll come and dance at her wedding, which seems like a totally reasonable... The Millers are ready to beam aboard. They seem nice-ish. In traditional sitcom roles, the wife is haughty, the husband is a typical 80s upper middle-aged sitcom husband, and Troy's betrothed, Wyatt, he's there. Troi senses something off of him. Not disappointment exactly, but surprise. She is not what he was expecting. And where is Deanna's mother? Mrs. Miller says Lwaxana Troi will not beam aboard until she is sure that they won't be in the transporter room. Picard ushers them away. With the Millers gone, the comically brash and overbearing Lwaxana beams in, chastising Deanna for speaking words to her rather than thinking them at her, and assuming that Captain Picard will carry her luggage to her quarters. Act 2. What do we know about Lwaxana? She can read people's thoughts, and to hear her tell it, every man is attracted to her sexually. Also, she doesn't like the Millers anymore. They've changed. Deanna confides to her mother that she has misgivings about this whole marriage to the Miller boy, but she knows her duty, and she will follow through. On the bridge, the leader of the people of Haven is hailing the Enterprise. So glad you're here, especially because an unidentified ship is approaching our planet. It's refusing to communicate. It would be great if you could stop it from hurting us, if that's what it's trying to do. You know, since we have that treaty with the Federation and all. On the passenger deck, Deanna is getting to know her future husband. He's a medical doctor. She thinks eventually she and he could read each other, kind of like her and this other guy who is also on the ship, by the way. Could get awkward. You think that's awkward? See all these pictures Wyatt's drawn? Yeah, they're of the woman of his dreams. Literally, like he has seen her in his dreams since he was a kid. He really thought that Troi would end up being her. Back on the bridge, the unidentified and uncommunicative ship approaching Haven is identified. It's a Tyrellian vessel, and that freaks the bridge crew out. Riker says he thought all of the Tyrellians were dead. What are the poor devils doing here? Picard says they cannot be allowed to destroy the Enterprise or Haven. Act 3. So the Tyrellians were destroyed by hate. Well, hate and biological warfare. Two warring factions on their planet. One came up with a weaponized biological something that ended up wiping out both sides. Some tried to escape the war, but they still carried the killer bug, wiping out other planets to which they tried to escape. It was thought that the last Tyrellian ship was destroyed 8 years ago, and now, great, these guys. The Enterprise is bound to protect Haven, however, it's also bound to help people in need. Assuming there are still living Tyrellians aboard the ship, they would certainly be people in need. Puts Picard and crew in a pickle. Speaking of pickles, who's hungry? Time for Deanna and Wyatt's rehearsal dinner. Bad hair, bad manners, cultural differences. On your marks, let's start the family feud. Wyatt is interested in the arrival of the Tyrellian ship. He's read about their plague and would love to help in any way that he can. Dr. Crusher says she would be happy for his help. Riker excuses himself. Not long after, Counselor Troi does too. She just has to blow up in front of everyone at the dinner first. Act 4. Troi tracks Riker down on the holodeck. They're discussing the intricacies of their feelings for one another in the wake of her approaching marriage to Wyatt. Speak of the devil, Wyatt joins them on the holodeck, which leads to Riker leaving about 15 seconds later. Wyatt gives Troi kudos for her emotional outburst. It shamed their parents into compromising on the wedding plans. By the way, do you actually want to marry me? Asks Wyatt. Deanna says she does, and they kiss. On the bridge, Picard's still puzzling over the Tyrellian ship. They know their messages are being received, though they're still not responding. And the planet Haven is freaking out. They want that ship destroyed. Instead, Picard drags the Tyrellian ship away from Haven with a tractor beam. The inhabitants of the ship finally make contact with the Enterprise, and there, on the screen, is the actual woman of Wyatt Miller's actual dreams. Act 5. Hey, says the guy leading the Tyrellians, is Wyatt there? Wyatt rushes onto the bridge, and wow, I draw that chick all the time. She is Ariana, and she's glad Wyatt came. Just as he promised? What did the Tyrellians want? Well, they don't want to make contact with the people of Haven because they still carry the infection that wiped out their planet and other planets too. No, they would just like a quiet place by the sea where they could die. Wyatt's still totally blown away by the woman of his dreams being real. He seeks answers from Lwaxana Troi. Well, duh, all life is connected. You suspected it. Ariana suspected it. That made it possible for the two of you to link up telepathically across the vast gulfs of space and time that separated you. Now, seriously, which of these headpieces would look better on me naked? Wyatt gathers some medical supplies to take with him. To beam over to the Tyrellian ship. He also goes to say good things to his parents and to Deanna. Then he beams himself to the Tyrellian ship, where he, for some reason, does not die. He takes a look at the drawings Ariana has made of him over the years. They knew he would come. You know, once they knew he actually existed. Aboard the Enterprise, Wyatt's parents are fuming, but the Tyrellians call in. with Wyatt among them, they say Picard can release the tractor beams, and they got what they really came for. Wyatt, he will work to cure the Trillians. The end, mostly.
Ken, it's a little known fact that I believe when Rod approached you to do Mission Log, and he said, you're going to need a co-host, how are you going to do this? You had actually drawn a picture of me. And he was like, wait, I know that guy. And then he came to me, and I had drawn a picture of you, and it's, this is how we're going to put the show together.
No, it's kismet. It's because, I always wanted to talk about Star Trek with somebody, and I guess you always wanted to talk about Star Trek too. And so, well, not Star Trek 2, although we did talk about Star Trek 2.
Well, I did want to talk about Star Trek 2, but Star Trek also.
Yeah, Star Trek as well, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that apparently opened up some, weird rift in the space-time continuum where,
Totally scientifically
absolutely
plausible.
Makes sense.
Totally plausible and totally provable because this show exists.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a great moment where Lwaxana's like, oh yeah, no, you totally, all life is connected, and Wyatt's like, I knew it.
Right.
Really?
Right.
Really? There's nothing.
No, because you didn't.
Oh, so much other stuff to talk about before we get to that, though. What do you got?
Yeah, well...
Oh, wait. Really quickly, I have to apologize. You're bringing almost all the notes this week. Because I just kept hurting my head watching it. Oh, did I spoil it?
Oh,
sorry. I know. And it's not... Here's the thing. This is not... Well, go ahead. Please.
Well, I was going to ask you, if you had the power and the technology of the Enterprise, and you was like, hey, I'm going to go relax in my cabin for a few minutes, would it be a miniature hologram of two vaguely Greek fantasy-dressed women playing a harp?
Can I tell you, honestly, there are two notes that I seriously made. There were two notes that I made. One of them is, I love Riker's TV. I question what he's watching. Because I do love his TV, and it's one of those things. Honestly, what he's watching, the problem is, I don't know if they figured they're going to blow the money on effects or what it was exactly, because it reminds me of that shot that I talk about quite often in The Cage, where we see the communicator laying on the table. Oh, yeah, right. And we just hold on that shot for just a little bit, a little too long, so that to give people a glimpse of what the future may hold, right? Yeah, I do wish he was watching something
interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, right. I mean, because here's the thing. A good bit of harp music is fine.
Yeah.
Personally, I prefer the harpsichord. I mean, even there, it's just sort of like, it felt like such a, like, oh, let's show this really neat technology, but with like the most boring show imaginable.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Well,
but yeah, I actually did like the illustration of what the technology could be, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's always interesting to me when you see a science fiction depiction of either entertainment in the future or we're trying to show a differently evolved culture. And inevitably, you end up going to Earth's past. So you just grab a bunch of actors and you put them in robes.
Sort of a Greco-Roman thing, yeah.
Yeah. And then we show harp music. And, it's very strange. I guess, designing the future is difficult. And I certainly did a good job with the Enterprise and the crew. And that's a very kind of consistent environment. And it has certain rules and boundaries around the technology there. But then when you have to show something different, well, what do you do? Well, we'll go with the robes again.
Yeah, I can actually see Riker, and of course, there would be a horrible litigation and probably cause far too much. But I could see Riker like watching an old concert or something.
Oh yeah,
like, even if you want to show like they're reaching back in history, then I could see him watching something from the 80s or 90s, or do like do a Fifth Element thing and show some kind of entertainment that's really weird. Because you're right, he's pretty much watching. It's like he's watching outtakes from I, Claudius.
Yeah, or maybe he should be watching Mel Torme concert.
Oh, you see, that'd be good. And they could probably get him on this episode because
they might. Yeah. I also was kind of struck by the idea of the efficiency of a communication system that requires a box with an animated humanoid face on the front of it. Because I hope that in the future the iPhone does not look like that.
I don't know. That'd be kind of fun. I assumed it was just a tradition thing, right? I mean, sort of like passing on the jewels, and then again, I guess we do have the question of what good are jewels. in the future, because when they leave, I didn't even mention it because it was kind of throwaway, but now it occurs to me. When they leave, when the Millers leave, they tell Deanna to keep the dowry because they were giving her basically all this jewelry.
Yeah, right.
And he says, keep it, you'll need it someday. And whether that is to dress up for the wedding or whether that is because, you know, well, you're going to have to buy a house and you're going to want to settle down, you know, so use all those jewels. I don't know. But yeah, I just assumed it was kind of a tradition thing. It's creepy.
Right. It's a creepy tradition.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your breakdown that there's a lot of hair going on in this episode. Hello, Tasha Yar. She's got a lot of hair going on in that scene.
She does.
But did you know this episode was nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Hairstyling in a Series? And I am not making that up. That is for real.
Do you suppose that was just based on volume? I don't mean volume of the hair. I just mean just the amount of hair they had to deal with because, there was a lot of hair.
Yeah. So it could have been just like, wow, they had to wrangle so much hair for that episode. Please give them an award. Please.
Yeah.
And I felt like, we'll get into the character stuff in a little bit, but I did feel like there was kind of a fine line between Lwaxana being a bold, eccentric woman versus acting like a child. And I, of course, this is the first time we've seen Lwaxana, and this is the first time we've explored that. And I kept thinking, okay, well, her attitude about the Millers may come from a legitimate set of cultural differences, but then acting it out. I guess I'm more thinking about that scene at dinner where she's wearing this, it looks like leaves on her arm, but apparently it's a living being that she kind of treats as a pet. And then she's kind of, making it creep over and grab Mrs. Miller's arm. And, okay, we get it that she's eccentric and wacky and kind of likes to provoke those around her. But then it also does seem kind of childish. Like, really, you're an adult. And thankfully, Deanna calls her out on it, especially you, Mother. But it made me... you and I are rediscovering the show here, and we're rediscovering the characters here. And it made me wonder, okay, how do you sustain that over a half dozen episodes more when we bring her back? Is she just the annoying child? Or do we get to learn a bit more faceted version of her character? I hope we do.
Well, I was going to say we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
Yeah, I guess we will.
Here's what I will say, and I know breaking the timeline and what have you. I don't remember hating Lwaxana Troi. I do know, just from reading stuff online, that there are lots of people who do.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I don't remember hating Lwaxana Troi, so my assumption is that she's going to mellow out a bit.
Yeah.
Either that or I just buried it all. I'm not sure which. But yeah, had I got to think that the character is going to mature a bit, assuming that the character comes back. Because if it had been this the whole time, I think, I would have probably just, started chewing off my own arm to get away from the TV when this episode was on.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of characters, though, this is one of the few times that I feel like either the writing or the direction for Data plays false. So, we've established that he is interested in human beings, and I get that. But at least in that whole dinner scene, he kind of is just wandering this room, just bouncing with no direction at all, with this bemused but painted on look on his face, and it didn't feel right. It felt like we were trying to shoehorn comedy into this in an already over the top scene.
Yes.
So, I was not a fan.
I loved his face, though. That's the thing. I loved his face.
Really?
I get it. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I think we'll have to come back to that later because with every point you make, I am in danger of going straight to the summation.
Okay.
But I will say, just from just the look on his face was did it belong there? No. Was it appropriate? No. But it's neat because you're used to seeing Data, or used to seeing Brent Spiner with the same sort of just expressionless face, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a raise of the eyebrow or that's it. And so it's actually just neat too. After watching, I guess, is this the 10th episode? After watching 10 episodes, to see a facial expression on him was kind of fun.
Yeah, I guess it makes you wonder then, what is the programming in his positronic brain that says, okay, when this kind of thing happens, here's what your face will look like. You know? Because there's really no other reason for it.
Well... Oh, wow. Really? Are we going to have a discussion about this? Here's the thing. We're assuming that there is something in Data's makeup that is making him want to learn, and whether that's been programmed in or not, who knows? But would he not then, if there is any learning possible from Data, and I don't just mean the assimilation of information, but I mean if there's actual learning, if there's actual growth that's possible for this character, then coming across something surprising, I mean, might give him an expression of surprise, right? Or maybe even an expression of amusement. Yeah. So maybe he would have sort of the same kind of human reaction, although his human reaction would be the reaction of like a 5-year-old. Like, you know, you see somebody hit their head and fall down, a 5-year-old will laugh. And, you know, so a lot of people who are a lot older as well. But then there are other people who will rush to see, is that person okay? And then there are other people who will just be embarrassed by the sort of social awkwardness that's going on at that dinner. Data is not, I mean, he actually says to Picard, maybe it's because you're used to humans, you don't find this fascinating, but dude, this is some wacky stuff.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he picked up that look of amusement from Riker. Because Riker spends a lot of time bemused.
Looking at Data that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So there you go. So there's. Hey, we found something. Can we call it?
Is it just me, or does Counselor Troi's mother's voice remind you of someone else? I can't quite put my digits on it, but she sounds familiar.
And now the moment I feel certain people have been waiting for, my second written note on this show. I did have some other thoughts, by the way. I just didn't write them down because after a while it just felt like trying too hard, I guess. I don't mean working too hard. I got no problem working for an episode. Go back and listen to the Corbomite maneuver if you don't believe me. But it felt like trying too hard to write stuff down for this episode. For me, thank God there's John Champion. Or thank, whatever.
Whomever.
There's John Champion. That's what John would say. I don't want to start that fight again this week.
Thank my mom and dad.
Yes, thank John's mom and dad. In fact, we should get them on for a supplemental. Has he always been like this, we'll say? And they'll say, like what? The other note that I had on this episode was the discussion between Picard and Data right at the very beginning. I think it might have actually been in the prologue. If it wasn't, I know it was in Act 1, where Picard has been waxing rhapsodic in the captain's log about how awesome Haven is. So awesome, in fact, that some people think it's like mystical and it's got powers to heal and, all kinds of stuff. And apparently that waxing rhapsodic spilled out into just walking around the bridge, talking about how awesome Haven is and how some people, legend has it, this place is really hopping. And Data says, a legend that has absolutely no basis in fact. And forgive me, I do the deep voice there because it actually reminded me a little bit of a Kirk Spock exchange. And that's not to put too much gravitas on this, but it reminded me of a Kirk Spock exchange because it's the kind of thing Kirk might say, I hear the babes on this planet have magical powers. And Spock would say that's got no basis in anything. It's not true. And then, Kirk would fire back the way Picard did, going, oh, but, legends sometimes can come true. Now, it strikes me as more of a Kirk thing to say than a Picard thing to say. And it's obviously setting the tone for this is just going to be one of those episodes. This is going to be an episode full of wacky, whether it's like wacky comedy or wacky... Look, you already have to suspend your disbelief because we have warp drive and transporters. But really, even in that suspension of disbelief that we've done, we're going to kick it up a notch in this episode because, it turns out also magic.
Well, to Picard's credit, at least he begins that statement with legend. Legend has it, not like, I heard this from some reputable source, but here's the legend. I'm still with Data on this. I'm like, prove it. bring the proof of your claim.
Well, okay. And it's indicated that proof is going to be coming, right? I mean, this is
right.
It is kind of weird, though. You're right, because that exchange is, some people say this, and Data could have said, well, those people are idiots, and Picard might say, and I believe those people. Right. Data might have to go, I don't know. I don't know what Data would do at that point. But it was kind of it was not exchange. It's like, because you're right. Picard starts it off with legend has it, but then he goes on to say, and legends can be spot on.
Yeah.
Just ask the leprechauns we met last week, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad that we didn't get to know more about that planet. And too bad we didn't get to know more about what maybe magical healing properties they do have. Yeah. And if they're not magical, at least figure out what those healing properties are and can they be used.
Yeah. You know? Do you think if the Trellians had landed down there that maybe it would have healed them?
Because, well, that's what I kept thinking.
Because we do know there is magic now in this place. Oh, no, the magic is not there. It's actually not magic. It's that all life is tied together. And so if you think really hard about something and somebody else also happens to be thinking really hard about that thing, then maybe the two of you will end up bumping into each other at the coffee shop and, I don't know, getting married or saving a society or something. I have no idea.
Man, poor Deanna Troi, because, you know, Deanna Troi is so far a very, like, emotionally centered woman, you know, and just to walk in to meet your betrothed, and he's just pulling out pictures of somebody else, like, oh, wait, isn't she fabulous? I have been dreaming about this woman for so long, my entire life. I mean, let me tell you exactly how obsessed I am with this other woman.
In fairness, he did think that she was going to end up being that woman.
Yeah, you don't pull out the pictures until you know for a fact.
Well, he probably wanted to show her. Look, I've been drawing pictures of you. Oh, your hair was and your no. Oh,
yeah. I'm just a bad artist.
No, this really is you.
It's totally you.
Around the eyes, no, because you have two, and so does my drawing.
Yeah. I give props to Deanna, but I'm still having trouble grasping the whole Lwaxana character. And maybe it's just because I feel like, wow, if you spend enough time around a Betazoid with all their mind reading, because she is just straight up reading minds. It's not like Deanna being half human, where she sort of gets the feeling, well, they're happy, they're confused, they're hiding something. Lwaxana is just straight up reading minds and telling people what she reads. And this is seriously intimate stuff. I mean, even Vulcans are a little reluctant to use their powers, like mind melds every now and then. But Lwaxana is just going around saying, you believe this and you feel this. And I have to wonder if that's even acceptable by Betazoid standards. You know, you would feel like they have some kind of boundaries maybe on their abilities when they encounter someone else. You know, it was interesting to hear them say humans often feel one way but say another. You know, they think one way and act another way. And that was kind of cool. That was kind of cool to just point out, because we pointed it out before, and that could be difficult for an alien that doesn't do that, that just says exactly what they believe and acts exactly in the way that they say. But it made me really wonder how we're supposed to look at the Betazoids, at least this Betazoid, you know?
Well, let me back up a tiny bit. I mean, when you're talking about the Betazoids and being around the Betazoids, my assumption is that they have to learn well how to do that, which I would think would also mean a certain amount of defensiveness, like being able to block your mind. I can't remember which foil we've come across now. Oh, it was the Traveler.
Oh, sure.
Where Deanna thought that, you know, he was blocking his thoughts, I believe. Or no, she just couldn't read. There was somebody that she was concerned that they were blocking their thoughts from her, and that made them formidable. My assumption is that the Betazoids can do that and do that. And the only reason I'm assuming that is because her mother is chastising her for talking. And then when Deanna starts, you know, doing the whole mind talking instead, Lwaxana is like, oh, okay, good. So you haven't forgotten. So, I mean, this is not necessarily something that I think is inherent. It's something that they sort of, you know, learn, or it's something, it's a skill that they hone at the very least. Right. Even if it is inherent in them, the ability to do it. It's kind of like the Force in the original trilogy before we learned about midichlorians, right? There are some people who just kind of have it, and then Jedi actually learn to use it, or Sith actually learn to use it.
Yeah, right? Either way.
Yeah, and then so I sort of assumed it was the same thing here. The thing that I found myself wondering was, it was not until, I guess, the second or third time that I was watching this episode this week when they were talking about the ultimate honesty. So really, everybody, including Picard, is just totally attracted to Lwaxana? Because I assumed that she was just... Because if I were a mind reader, and it were proven that I were a mind reader, I might go around and tell people, oh, yeah, he was totally thinking that. Even if he wasn't, just because, you know, it's a joke, right? Or she was, oh, yeah, she was totally thinking that. Even just to be funny, right? Yeah, but if she's, like, ultra honest... then really everybody's just totally attracted to her.
Well, but I mean, here's the thing. She's honest, but she's manipulative.
Right.
So,
but she's not lying. That's the thing. When she's like, oh, yeah, he totally wants to see me naked. And he's like, okay, so from his reaction, obviously he does. But then when she says in the end that Picard is attracted to her, it's like, wait, okay, well, we've learned a lot about Picard this week, haven't we? Because I'm not sure what that was exactly that would have attracted him to her. And yet, if she is ultra honest, then I guess that must be true.
It is interesting that through all of that, through having to navigate emotions and thoughts, that Lwaxana is a character who basically lacks empathy. I mean, she really, it's not like she's a killer or anything, but not that we know of. But Deanna is a character based on her empathic abilities, and that makes her special. But Lwaxana shows up and just does not care about the feelings of others except how they relate to her. It is purely about her. So, yeah, boy, it's a tough character to navigate. And I am glad that we'll actually get more, though, because I feel like at least my impression of her right now is that other than the wacky mother, there's not a lot there, but we'll get it later. We
have talked in the past, I believe it was actually around Troi. It was since we started Next Gen, I know, about there maybe being something to the half human, half blank, right? I mean, the Vulcans are, in certain situations, are fairly useless because they're tied totally to logic. And Spock's got that warring thing in him where he's half Vulcan, half human. And from that, really wonderful things end up happening, right? Like,
right.
Like he was able to establish contact with V'ger, or really he was just able to sense V'ger. He didn't close his mind to it because there's a human curiosity about it, but he was, also open to it, I guess, telepathically because the half Vulcan thing. Same sort of thing with Troi. I mean, I would think that the Betazoids would actually be kind of useless if they were all like Lwaxana. If they were, if all they could do was me their way through the galaxy, right? There's I mean, that empathy thing. I mean, maybe she has more of an empathy for humans and other species because she's only half this thing. So I don't know. Maybe it's that whole half human, half blank combo.
Well, Ken, I would call that an idic thing, even.
Would you?
I would, because when the whole idea is that when you get to that third thing, when item 1 and item 2 come together and you end up with that third thing, whether it's a compromise, a philosophical compromise, or a new being, as we did in V'ger in the motion picture, something like that, I would call that idic. But the interesting thing about idic in this episode, to me, the challenging part was, where do we draw the line on respect for other cultures? Even Picard is a little put off at the whole idea of an arranged marriage, and put aside just the joking about the nude wedding and all of that. Because the arranged marriage is archaic, but even the Vulcans do it. So we're at least still familiar with this idea way in the future. And I wondered that, is this a place where perhaps the implied, there's a lot of words you could put around it, exploitation or potential for abuse or stopping individual rights is more important than the tradition. Does idic then not apply? Is this one of those cases where idic does not tolerate the intolerance of an individual's right to choose his or her own destiny? That seemed to be the difficult part here.
Well, I wonder if it is because, I mean, she's on the Enterprise, right? I mean, it is accepted. It seems to be accepted all the way through. Maybe not by the parents, but so I mean, that's just the thing with parents, right? You were going to be a doctor. What happened to being a doctor? You were going to be a lawyer. What happened to being a lawyer? Well, okay, kids are free to not become those things that their parents expect them to be. I mean, Troi is going along with it, but it seems obvious that she doesn't have to. It is expected of her. Yeah. It's expected of her both by the Millers and by her mother and by the society, but she doesn't have to. She's on a starship, for crying out loud. She could just say, no, I don't want to. And Wyatt even asks her, so do you really want to do this? And she says she does, because she actually seems to kind of like him, or at least thinks that she could, come to love him at some point. It's weird that after only 3 minutes with him, she's like, yeah, you and I could totally read each other one day. Just like the only other person I've ever been able to do that with.
Yeah.
It was a little surprising, but, maybe there is something to the genetic bonding. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think if we came across a planet where it's like, well, she's 13 now and it's time to marry her off to that other guy, that we might have a bit more of a question. It feels more like she is a person who is deciding whether or not she's going to live up to the expectations. Granted, those expectations were made years ago, but it's not like, I don't think that the police of Betazoid are going to come and arrest her if she chooses to throw off the betrothal.
No, but all the parents are already decided. And it's not even a question posed to her. Like, yeah, I agree that Deanna is a strong enough character and she is adult enough of a character that we get it. She can make decisions on her own and she has chosen a career path. But when everybody shows up, they're just like, this is what's happening.
Right.
That box, that creepy box shows up and just like, here you go, you're getting married. And every adult then, every parent that shows up after the fact, nobody even poses the question to her.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this?
It did strike me as bizarre that Picard was like, so when you and your husband get together, are you going to stay on the ship? There wasn't even a question from him like, really? You're getting married? I mean, that didn't even happen. It was just like, so what is this? Do we need to get you bigger quarters, or do we need to start, cleaning the carpet in your place because somebody else is moving in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of weird. I mean, and it's not an episode about arranged marriage and going into the dark details of whether we're for it or against it, or is this culturally acceptable. The episode's not about that. It was just more about the characters. But it was an interesting thing to bring up. And like I said, I was just a little surprised that nobody asked Deanna. But I guess then you lose the dramatic element there. It is enjoyable to see kind of the clash of cultures. Going back to the Idic thing here, I didn't feel like it was anything particularly new, but it's relatable. Picard does his best as a peacemaker. I love that he makes the decree at the party that Starfleet tradition forbids arguing at a cocktail party. So he just declares, from now on, differences are resolved. Boom, because I said it. So let it be written, so let it be done.
And they lived happily ever after.
Right. Yeah. But it did make me think, and you hear this sometimes from people who, let's say they have a difficult time not being married, but a difficult time getting married, that sometimes the wedding is more about the people who aren't getting married. It's about the whole tricky navigation of families and expectations and traditions and blah, blah, blah. So
I know nothing about that at all.
I see I'm being very vague, Ken, so I know that you know nothing about it. Yeah.
Good on you. Thank you very much.
Right. We did hit on an interesting little thing about Terrellians, that they may be a little bit like us. They had a civil war that wiped out both sides of their cultures by using biological weapons. And then when they were used by one side, it kind of backfired and killed those people who had launched the weapon. But all of this presents an interesting conundrum to the people of Haven. Sure, they've got a beautiful place full of healing ability, but if you bring your plague-riddled bodies here, we will have your starship blasted right out of the sky.
Yeah. I don't think anybody actually believes that Haven has healing ability, though.
I guess the people of Haven don't even really believe in the ability of their planet to heal anybody.
No, they don't. They don't at all. Because she's like, yeah, you're right. It was kind of amazing, actually, where she's like, it's this like peace, fun-loving planet. She's like, hey, is that ship dead yet? Have you destroyed that ship yet? Have you killed those people coming towards our planet yet?
Please.
Because they won't even talk to me. And if they won't even talk to me, just kill them.
Yeah.
Part mysticism, part population-destroying plague, part comedy. What do the various parts of Haven add up to?
Ken, I fear that early on we may have perhaps given up our feelings about this episode.
Might have because now hands a tiny bit, yeah.
now we've arrived at the point where we got to sum it all up, and we have to say if the episode holds up, and we have to parse the messages and whether or not they hold up. So I'll present it to you first. I want to know if you feel like this episode holds up.
No, this episode is terrible.
Okay.
This episode is just horrible. And, I mean, the one good thing about this episode is you do get to see Lwaxana Troi. You do get to see Majel Barrett. And the good news is that's going to get better. Because if she were just some other actress, if she weren't Christine Chapel, if she weren't number one, if she weren't Mrs. Roddenberry at some point, if that were just some other actress and this character only happened one time, you would just hate this character, and you'd probably end up hating the actress too. Knowing who she is and knowing that character is going to soften somewhat, at least in my memory, she does. That is the one thing that might make this episode kind of okay. Mm-hmm. I was really hoping for something with the Torellians. I was really hoping for some sort of, a moral conundrum. I mean, it really is interesting. Picard does have a problem. He's like, okay, so we are required to defend Haven, but we are also required to help these people. And that might have actually had some interesting, sort of philosophical or sort of difficult like dealings or, any number of things might have happened there. Oh, but I forgot magic. So even that is going to fold into the rest of the thing. It's just incredibly, incredibly disappointing. Horribly acted, terribly written. You know what it reminded me of?
What?
It reminded me of later Marx Brothers movies, or like the major motion pictures with the Three Stooges, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got the Enterprise, and we love the Enterprise, and we've got Picard, and we seem to love Picard at this point. It's interesting to me that you say that this was filmed even before The Last Outpost, because I got to imagine there were people walking around on set with this script going, I don't know. You know, I mean, because this is dicey. If this had come up earlier in the series, I wonder how it would have done for the rest of the series. And we're only 10 episodes in, but if this had been like the second or third episode, I have no idea how it would have gone. And it's weird to think about that now, because as we record this, we're coming up on the 27th anniversary. As we record this, we're coming up on the 27th anniversary of TNG. It's weird to think about that show being tenuous at any point. But then if you go back and watch the first few episodes, there are lots of times where it seems like this thing could have just sunk like a stone.
Yeah.
It's just the reason it reminded me of the later Marx Brothers movies, or it reminded me of the Three Stooges movies, is because there are all these parts that we love. There's Groucho, there's Chico, there's Harpo, right? But they end up sort of like taking this almost like, okay, we're going to show the funny Marx Brothers parts, and then we're going to show like the romance, or we're going to show the totally ridiculously, even for a Marx Brothers movie, put together plot. Same thing happened with the Three Stooges movies as well. And it may seem silly to compare all these things, but that's what it comes down to. There's lots of stuff that you're supposed to love in this. Hey, there's Data. Hey, there's the Enterprise. Hey, there's Picard. What the heck is going on with the rest of this episode? It was borderline painful. Made me miss The Naked Now. There.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
Yes, we have a new low water mark as far as I'm concerned, with the exception of Lwaxana Troi. But again, that's just trading on what she's going to become, because in this episode, no.
Right.
What about you?
I mean, well, going on the Lwaxana thing, you kind of go into it, if you're even just a marginal Star Trek fan, going like, oh, okay, I know the name Roddenberry, and I know that this is the actress who played Christine Chapel, and I know that this is the voice of the computer. So you kind of go into it like it's almost a family reunion at that point. So you're glad to see that person. And Majel had this bigger than life personality. So to really get to let her do something fun and over the top, compared to Chapel, who we very often said was just a wasted character, that's exciting. But as you're also saying, we're excited about what that character can become, because as an episode, as a standalone thing, this does not hold up. I find that the production is tough. It's maybe not as bad looking as some of the other episodes, but it's a little rough. The styling is a little rough, even though there's just so much hair. Potentially award-winning hair. Potentially award-winning hair, yes. I felt kind of like, I guess it was in Lonely Among Us, where I felt like we focused at one point on the wrong story, because we had this negotiation between two different species that were on board, the dogs and the lizards, and they were going to kill each other. But Picard had the very difficult task of negotiating their peace and getting them to a place where that peace could be fulfilled. And then we just didn't do it. We ended with, they're trying to eat the lizard ambassador. Huge wasted opportunity. So I felt the same way that you did. Here's this plague ship. Here's this planet that could potentially heal, maybe. But if the legend is just a legend and there's no fact to it, what do we do? How do we navigate this? And even if you end with somebody who is so altruistic and maybe misguided, driven by this bizarre love story, not bizarre love triangle, but
although kinda,
yeah. Maybe you could have still ended with that idea that here's somebody who sacrifices himself potentially to go dedicate himself to helping these people. All of that is interesting stuff. We didn't get the interesting stuff in this episode.
No, even the Clash of Cultures thing, honestly, I have to disagree with you a bit. It didn't feel like a Clash of Cultures to me. It felt like bad sitcom in-laws.
It was bickering, yeah.
Yeah, it felt like, okay, well, I love you and you love me and we love each other and now we have to introduce our parents. So meet the Fockers or, 2 or 3 or that, except, those were actually funny.
Right.
Well, the first one was. I didn't see the rest of them. The first one was funny, but I don't know. Yeah.
So is there a message?
Oh, pass. I don't think so. I mean, when it all devolves down to mysticism.
Yeah.
Then you really take the message part out of it, it seems to me. I mean, you could say there was something to Deanna's being willing to do what she agreed to do a long time ago, except that doesn't come to fruition. You could say that, I mean, like, as you say, had it been Wyatt is going to go over and help those people because he's the only person who can, even though blank. But I mean, that doesn't even apply because he thinks that he can help heal those people. And also there is the woman literally of his dreams. So, I mean, you can't even make the whole he's making a sacrifice point. I mean, he might die, but he might not because those people didn't. So, I mean, he is kind of running a risk, but he is running a risk that magic has told him his whole life he was born to run anyway. And I'm sorry to keep saying magic. You can say Gaia. You can say the interconnectedness of all things. You can say whatever you want to.
It's magic.
In this episode, it's magic, right? Yeah. Pretty much. And so the fact that everything in this episode hinges on magic and we don't actually get examination of the real things worth examining, like the difficult situation that Picard could be in of having to both help and destroy those people so that he can help these other people. No, I don't think there was one. Was there? What about you?
Well, there's later more serious Star Trek to come where maybe they could have taken on the idea of arranged marriage and what is that fine line, like I said before, where you respect a cultural tradition, but then you also try to navigate respecting the sanctity of the individual to make decisions. I mean, that could have all been interesting stuff.
I think I know the episode you're talking about.
Yeah?
I'm looking forward to that one. Okay. Yeah, no, seriously. I think I know what you're talking about. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, that can be and will be very interesting stuff. And to see a negotiator like Picard work that out, that's fascinating. But we didn't get that in this episode. Yeah. Maybe if there's a message for a guy like Wyatt, follow your heart, even if that leads you to beam yourself over to an infected plague ship to the love of your life.
So long, son. We'll check in 2 weeks. Oh,
hey, he might be lucky. They might be like, oh, wait, we didn't have the plague after all. We assumed we did because everybody else did.
Well, no, they say that they carry it, but he's also done a lot of studying on it. My assumption is that he's going to be fine, that they're going to be fine. And
I got that impression.
That is his assumption as well. Although, again, it's sort of like what we talked about in the Corbomite maneuver with Baylock and whoever it was that flew around with him.
Right.
Yeah, check back in a month. We'll see.
There's no reason that plague ship can't fly right alongside the Enterprise as they beam each other medical equipment. This can be an ongoing thing.
No, they have to sail off into the sunset.
Just don't get near Haven.
Ever.
Ever. So do those messages hold up? Sure. Okay. Even if it's a plague ship full of people that may kill you, follow your heart. No, don't. Don't talk it out with somebody first, please, before you make that decision.
I don't even know which one you're advocating anymore.
No, neither.
All right.
Neither.
All right.
I'm not advocating.
You just want to say goodbye, don't you?
Well, I want to save my goodbye for next week, because next week, Ken, it's the big goodbye.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Planning on visiting Haven? Be sure to call ahead. Seriously, they get a little touchy if you don't. End transmission.